So this is what it looks like when you first go on to NearPod.com. At the top, you'll see a sign-in area for the teacher and join session for students. When students join your session, they will click here and enter the code. We'll get into that shortly. When you go ahead and sign in, you'll use your username that you set up. And then you will come to your dashboard. So here I have quite a few different lessons that I've already put together for middle and upper school teachers and their classes. You can start a session, you can trash something you don't plan to use again, but more importantly, rather than reinventing the wheel, you can choose to duplicate. You can also share here. Quick fun feature, you can send an editable copy, which, as you can see here, will actually add this to the recipient's NearPod library. That's really useful because then they can make their own changes. So what we're going to do is duplicate the show that we've been using. In the beginning, I'm going to go ahead. So here we have our duplicated slideshow. So we can change the top here. I'm actually making this for lower school. Our fifth graders need to learn how to properly cite their material. We've been using URLs, but we've not been using full MLA formatting. So what they will see when they log on is citation and plagiarism. I have a poll right now. I'm actually going to simplify this. This was meant for upper school. Rather than So we're actually going to start, rather than with full citations, we're going to go ahead and start with simple something a little bit easier here. So we've just done a goofy googleimagesearch.com versus an actual URL from National Geographic. When we go through the presentation, you'll be able to see what, as the presenter, you will see as your students answer these questions. Now, the slideshow that I use is going to remain the same. This is an embedded PowerPoint, so this has been created on my computer. You can also use Google Slides. This doesn't really need to change. They do need to learn MLA formatting, but more importantly, they're also going to see here why it is important to cite and the problems with plagiarism. So up here, we are going to say, do you feel comfortable citing information you find online? Now, I also have the option to add content. As I mentioned earlier, you can add a full slideshow. That's a PowerPoint, that's Google Slides. You can add an audio, video, or just a plain slide. You can also add web content. And hold on one second. There we go. So the URL I'm going to add is to the Purdue OWL site. So I'm going to go up here and copy. And then once we've copied, I'm actually going to paste. And I'm going to make sure that you always want to test your link. So this is to the MLA overview and workshop for the Purdue Online Writing Lab, the Purdue OWL. Going back to my presentation, I know this link works. I'm going to save it. This actually adds the website as a slide in my presentation. Now that I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and publish. You can, as I've said, after you've published, you can reiterate, you can add, you can delete. But now that it's published, I have the option of assigning it as homework. I can edit, I can delete, I can also go into my live session. This is what you will do when you're actually ready to present to your class of students. So, like we had said at the very beginning, you'll want to go to nearpod.com. I usually start with that written on the board, and then once I start a session, I'll put the pin up as well. You can also email this pin to your entire class. You can link to social networks. There are a couple of different options here. So this is what your students will see on each of their computer screens. If someone comes in late or an administrator wants to join, you can also share the code up at the top. It's always displayed. In the upper left-hand corner here, you'll also see the number of people who have joined. So if you have a class of 19 and you see that 17 people are here, you know that you're missing a couple or that someone needs to share. Students can log on with any name that they like, but you also have the opportunity to view their names, and you can kick them off and have them re-log on with a more appropriate name if that comes up. So you can always see your student names here. When you hit the button to go to the next slide, everyone's computer screens who are part of the presentation will automatically go to that next slide with you. In the left-hand side here, this will update to show the percentage of people who have answered with each answer. It will show you how many people have given no answer, how many people have answered A, and how many people have answered B. It will also list the student names to the left with their answers to the right. Now, the embedded slideshow is interesting because it allows students to progress at their own pace, so it requires some interaction on their part. This is a good way of keeping students engaged, even though you're already controlling what happens on their computer screens. This keeps them following along with you. So, if you go to slide 2, go into why citation is important. Talk about if you're mentioning a quote. This is a quick example from an upper school example slideshow. I might dumb it down a little bit for lower school, but I'm also not going to make any excessive changes because I might talk about people gaining immunities to disease through increasing numbers of people in a society. So it's not something outside of the realm of possibility. As we go forward, it's not loading for me at the moment. Internet connection is not the best right now, but I have not had issues with this presentation taking up too much bandwidth. I think it's because I have my handy screencast-o-matic going, so we'll move ahead on from that right now. So after going through the slideshow that's been embedded, so here we have another quick poll. After the slideshow, go ahead and ask, do you feel comfortable citing information you find online? This will allow me to gauge which students answer which question, so which students are more comfortable with citing their information. It's also going to give me an idea if the entire class says no, then I'm not really sure that this was effective. If the entire class says yes and I have one or two who don't feel as comfortable, then I know that I've done a fairly good job and I'll need to just tie up some loose ends with those few students. To wrap up at the very end here, I have my OWL Purdue Online Writing Lab. When the students click onto this slide, it will actually open a new tab in their browser with this website. So they can all individually bookmark the site that they have opened. I also mention easybib.com in my PowerPoint that is embedded in this NearPod. There are so many great tools that we can share, but I really want them to focus on looking up MLA style themselves using Purdue's Online Writing Lab rather than using EasyBib every single time, although I completely encourage that. But I'd like them to go through the work of actually Googling that and finding that on their own computers on their own time. This is the conclusion of my NearPod slideshow. My Works Cited is actually embedded. If you go back and take a look at the full PowerPoint that's embedded, that's actually the last slide on that PowerPoint. And one last point with this, you can, as you go along on your view screen as the presenter, see what other slides you have. So if you need to go back to that slideshow, you can actually drop that back in. So then you can say, oh, I wanted to show you my Works Cited page. Here we go. My Works Cited page also has notes. I believe that we do need to model everything that we need in order for our students to really get the full impact. And I intend to actually use the same PowerPoint portion for my lower school students as I use for my middle and upper school students, because they need to know how rigorous this can be. I'm not going to expect them to do full MLA citations, but they do need to know this is part of a citation because they will be expected to do this next year. So rather than require them to do full in-text citations, I personally will require a full works cited page and to give credit, or as we like to say in the lower school, a shout out to their source. Now at the end of your presentation, you can click on Reports. An assessment of the presentation will be sent to my email account, which will show me who answered which questions and what percentage of the students answered which questions in which way. As you can see, there are always more features available if you're willing to pay for them. I do not have a premium account, however, there are some wonderful additions, being able to draw, being able to add some things in while you're on the go. For right now, we're going to go ahead and end this session. This sets everyone free, but it also will kick them off. So if they've not clicked on that last slide, they will no longer have the opportunity to do so. I always try to warn my students before I do that final end of presentation, but once it's over, it will return you back to your own homepage with all of your library options. So that's the quick and dirty for NearPod. You can always start a fully new presentation. I tend to do a lot of citation and plagiarism, plain citation, and online sources and searches. So that's what a lot of my focus is for different classes, subjects, and age levels. So right now, that's really what I have. So I hope this was helpful, and best of luck using NearPod.